Alright, looks like we are live, everybody. Let me just triple check, make sure everything looks good. Perfect. Alright. Welcome to another Thursday. We have another camera class for everybody. Today is the final Thursday of the month. We were off last week, and the week before was our advanced class. But to kind of sum everything up, let me pull up the presentation. The first week was our intro to cameras. Intro to cameras, we focused on the very kind of nitty-gritty beginning parts of how to use a regular camera. We talk about shooting, shooting in automatic mainly, the buttons and the layout and what each button really means and does, the importance of reading the owner's manual, SD cards, and then at the very end of that class we talk about lenses, how to understand lenses and how to go from there. After that, we go into intermediate cameras where we talk about the breakdown of how a camera works, shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, the differences between using all of them together and then using them separate from each other. We then get into other advanced settings like our exposure compensation, how our auto white balance works, how does something like the, what was the other one? Oh, why is it slipping my mind? Light metering, how does stuff like that work, just to kind of sum everything up there. Advanced photography, we talk about how to shoot a photo, what steps go into taking a great photo, and then how to edit those photos after we've taken great pictures. From there then too, we talk a little bit about going through and getting more advanced gear and setup. Now, in the beyond the traditional camera, we break away from all of that. So now it's in the nicest way, forget everything I've taught you before. Today we're really focusing on things like drones, GoPros, Insta360 cameras, camcorders, basically anything that's a step beyond what we're normally using. So without further ado, let's break into it. For anybody who's new to how I do this, the goal of this class is for you guys to ask any questions that you might have as I'm going forward with it. Feel free to chime in at any point in time and ask questions that you may have. Let me know in the comments, or in the chat bar there, and then I'll answer them live for you. But yeah, so first and foremost, why do we advance past the camera? Why does it matter? Well, advancing past the camera, a regular camera, can give us more portability and travel. And when you look at something like a GoPro or an instant camera, you can see how small and how tiny they are. They're easy to take around with us. Durability and waterproofing is the second portion. They're very durable cameras that can be beat up, thrown around, and we'll see a couple clips and some pictures that show that off. And a lot of them can go underwater. I know without a case, you can go 33 feet underwater. With a GoPro with a case on, you can get almost all the way up to about 200 feet under the water. Recording time. Depending on the camera that you've purchased, if you do have a mirrorless or DSLR, you might get a minimum of, or a maximum of 30 minutes in between recording sessions before you need to delete and then or restart the video and pick back up. That's the nice part with a lot of these cameras, is that you get the ability to keep recording after a period of time. So that's why I like these cameras too. And then my last point, ability to fly or record over great distances. That's more for the drones, but drones are really a unique experience. Again, mixes of different people who use them in their professional photography and business class, all the way down to people who are just hobbyists and want to use them for fun. All of these tools can technically be an arsenal to whatever your content creation is. If you're the intro photographer trying to take more photo and video, if you're the advanced photographer who's looking to get new achievements and new kind of points of view or ways of recording, there's a lot of cool options here that are available for you. Without further ado, let's get into it. So just to start off like we did the very first class, and I like to make sure, is where do your pictures go, and make sure you have two of them. Talk about SD cards. I say it in the first class, I say it in the last class. These are probably the most important accessories that you can purchase for your camera. Without this, you are limited to how much storage you have. Now, some of the devices that we're going to be talking about have some internal storage, but not much. Things like the Insta cameras from DJI have only about 8 gigabytes. Some cameras have none at all. So it's important that we have an SD card, and we want to have two of them. They're small, fragile little pieces. If anything were to happen and they don't work, and you go all the way out to do a shoot or something comes up, then you're going to kick yourself if you don't have additional storage for you to use. The micro SD card. Some to no internal storage on most of the cameras that we're talking about today. Let's keep that in mind when we're talking about these. We might not have the ability to record anything or save any photos if we don't have any internal storage. Now, we want to make sure we have something with a good read and write speed. We don't want to have something that's a slow card. We're talking about mainly videos here. So I would say anything that's 80 megabytes or faster is a good baseline read and write speed, especially for 4K video. The reason that's important is that the card receives it, so it reads the information that's ahead of it and writes it down. This is important when we're transferring photos and videos and when we're recording to make sure that our card is keeping up with the speed at which our camera is producing. And we want to make sure we have 64 gigabytes or higher, depending on the camera that we have, how many megapixels it has, and other features that are there. If we have something with a low storage or not enough storage, we're running into the problem or risking the problem of us not being able to save the video and have enough space to save it. Now, I like to show this little slide. I think it's kind of self-explanatory, but I do get asked this question a lot. Your picture should never live on your memory card. I use the analogy of your house and work. When you think about it, your car is taking you from home to work and to home from activities or back and forth from something. But you don't live in your car. Now, again, exceptions can be made if you're camping or if you do have van life or anything else that you might be doing. But for the majority of us, we use a car that takes you from point A to point B. And that's the idea of the SD card as well, too. The SD card's not there for it to be our only way of getting around. It's our means to an end. It's our means to get from one point to the other. So for SD cards, we're thinking of our camera, drone, camcorder, whatever the piece is, to our computer. The computer is where we're downloading the information, we're saving the information, we're preparing it for whatever its next step might be. Now, I have a way of doing that, and I want to share that with you guys. So, first and foremost, land the drone or turn the camera unit off, and you're going to wait 5 seconds. Now, if it's a drone, you're going to land and turn it off. If it's just a regular camera, turn it off. Wait a few seconds, I'd say 5 at least. This gives the card a chance to cool down, save everything it needs to save, and just kind of be done with the next steps. Next thing we're going to do is remove the physical card and place that into a card reader. Now, best practice is always to remove the card and try avoid using the camera to send pics to and from. What I mean by that is a lot of people, instead of buying a card reader, or they'll look at their laptop and say it doesn't have a card reader, instead they'll transfer it via the drone or the product, and that's fine and all, except now you're running the risk of losing or ruining your product. My best example is if, let's say, you're working, it's been a long night, so you have maybe a glass of wine or some other things on the table like water, and you accidentally knock that camera over, or knock the water or wine over, or whatever it is, and you spill it all over your gear. Not only will you fry out the SD card, but you most likely fry out the camera or the equipment. If you just use the SD card, at least you're running less of a risk of damaging your own product. Same thing if a power outage happens. Same thing if you have a dog with an overactive tail. Try to avoid using the device in which you shoot everything to transfer all the stuff. Invest in a card reader. Next thing, get that good card reader. It sounds pretty simple, but use a good card reader. Look online. We sell tons here in the store. We have different options for different speeds of cards and different variations, but one of my personal favorites is that little trifecta. I think it costs about $20, $25. Plug it into the computer. It transfers both micro and standard. You don't need an adapter. It's just easy to use. So definitely invest in a good card reader. Next step is to copy to a destination folder. Don't move, but copy them. If you're using Explorer, or if you're using Windows, it's Explorer. If you're using Mac, it's Finder. The reason we're copying them to a destination folder is that we want to label whatever the folder is. Now, some people have different ways of doing this. I have my own. The way I like to do it is that I like to label my destination folder the name of the event. So let's say I was at my kid's baseball game. It was, maybe he plays for the Sharks and they were playing the Cougars. Maybe I would label that baseball game, or maybe I'd label that folder Sharks vs. Cougars on, let's say, August 29th, 2024. From there, then, all photos, videos get transferred into that folder. And then I'm able to then categorize where I want that folder based on my own preferences. So for example, if I'm moving into that folder, maybe I will label another folder 2024, or maybe I'll label it August, and everything I shot in August gets put into that folder. Then I'll take all those folders, whether it's August, October, November, December, and move them into the yearly folder. When I go on my hard drive, that's how I have everything labeled. I go by year, by month, and then events within the month. This way, when in the future someone asks me about something I did in 2023, the photos I took or anything else, I can easily get to it, or at least have an easier time to find it. I try to do one big vacation every year. Other than that, I always like to just bring my camera out when I'm with family or friends. Within that time, I like to carry my camera with me so that I have it when I'm around. And I'll take pictures and go. When I come back to my computer, I'm copying those into a destination folder that I made. So that way I know exactly when and where and what year and what month I shot everything in to make it easy to find. Next thing I say on there is don't move them, copy them. You're duplicating them. And the reason you're duplicating it instead of just moving it from one section to the other is because by making a copy, you're ensuring that the photos are still saved onto the physical SD card. That way, if anything does go wrong, we always have the ability to go back to the SD card and transfer again. Now, the second thing to this step is going to be copying them to another place. I recommend something like an external hard drive. That's my personal favorite way of saving these photos, but Prime Photos are fantastic too if you have an Amazon account. Google Drive is a great photo storage, but these are cloud-based solutions. Ways for you to store your images, your work, everything that you have that's hard-earned onto something that's either tangible, like a hard drive, or something that's locked away by password and username. It's an easy way to get to your work later on without necessarily only cluttering up your computer. Definitely recommend saving them to your computer if you have enough space. I personally do not. I have probably about 5 to 6 terabytes worth of art information that I've made over the years. That being said, I don't have enough space on the computer. All of my stuff lives within a hard drive. And I have multiple hard drives throughout the house, stationed in different places, so that way I have easy access, number one. But number two, in case one goes bad, I have a backup to that. You always want to prepare for the worst case scenario, even if it never comes. If you're taking all these photos and videos and you lose any of them, you might be really bummed or sad. Lastly, now we're going to eject the card before physically removing it. That could be as simple as dragging it to the trash icon or left click and hit eject. But we want to make sure that it safely is ejected from the computer before we remove it. Then format the card inside the camera and don't erase it while it's still in the reader. Now, I only say this because a lot of people will reuse their cards for other cameras. If you format the card inside the camera you're about to shoot with, not only will it erase things, but it'll prime the card so it's optimized to shoot for that camera. That could mean more video, more photos on there in one go. So it's definitely worth the time to do so. Here's your backup plan. It starts with the SD card. That's where you're saving all the information from the device that you're currently shooting on. You're then moving that onto a computer. That's where you're downloading everything and saving everything, and you're moving, not copying, copying, not moving. The next thing to do is a hard drive or a cloud-based solution. I recommend the hard drive. I like to have a tangible item. It's easier for me to find and it's just quicker to navigate. I don't have any problem with cloud-based solutions. However, a cloud-based solution can be a little bit trickier. You gotta remember username and password, and if you're someone who just doesn't like to fuss with that, then I definitely would recommend a hard drive. But if you are adventurous, you want to try something different, you want to get out of your comfort zone a little bit more, try a cloud-based solution. It's not a bad option. There's tons of them out there. Adobe, OneDrive from Outlook and the people of Microsoft, and Prime Photo. All are great. All is really up to you as far as what you like to use. I might recommend Creative Cloud overall because they have the ability for you to use things like Lightroom, Photoshop, InDesign, so you can edit and play with things a little bit more and maybe design something as well as then get about 60 gigabytes worth of storage space. So both are good options. Now let's go through a tour of your device. I'm going to break this up into each different category of devices that we're talking about. I'll give a little brief synopsis of how the device functions and the button layout and how it works. If you have questions while I'm talking, please do let me know. I'll try to pause in between what I'm saying just to give a little bit of time to pass, so if you're typing something or if you're about to ask a question or if you're just thinking I'm talking too fast, it gives you a little bit of time for me to catch my breath and maybe take a sip of water. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. A tour of your device. Let's start with GoPros, or action cameras as they're mainly referred to. When it comes to action cameras, there are two buttons to these devices. Now, the two buttons are going to be the capture button and the power button. The capture button takes a photo or starts and stops your video. Now, it's easy to think, but it's a simple button, but it can be a little bit tricky, especially if you're not used to this. It's the red circle on the very top. It's a capture button. What it can do is take a photo or start and stop your video. And the only reason that you can do that is because the power button exists. Power button turns the unit on, which is pretty self-explanatory, but it also dials in between your modes. So things like photo, time-lapse, and video, which then give use to the capture button. If you are on video and you press the capture button, it'll start recording. Same thing with time-lapse, and same thing with photo, except it'll actually take your picture. Now you might be saying, that's great and all, but what if I want to change things? Well, that's where the screen comes into play. Your screen is a touch screen, and it's going to give you control over the device's array of functions and settings. Now you might be saying, what settings and what can I actually change via the screen? The screen is going to give you access to FPS, so frames per second. For the slower the video, the more we want to slow things down and get more of a slow-mo or action feel, we're going to do a higher frame rate. For a lesser and just standard video, we're going to just do a smaller or shorter video, or frames per second, sorry. Angle and lens millimeter size. For example, you can shoot wide, which will tell you on the screen 16 to 34. That's just your ability to do an electronic zoom on the camera. Most of these cameras that we're looking at don't have the telephoto capabilities that your mirrorless or DSLR would, where they put the big hunky lens on there. These are going to be smaller cameras that don't offer that, but they can do an electronic zoom. Video quality. Are you someone who's shooting in 1080, 720, 4K? What are you posting this to? If you're not posting this to something that needs to be high-end, why not shoot in 1080 or 2.7K? Save yourself on the battery life and give yourself more flight time. Hindsight is the camera's ability to focus on its subject and lock in. Hyper smooth is the camera's ability to keep itself stabilized. So when you watch some of these little videos that I'll show in a second, you're going to see how smooth the image looks, even as something's weaving, bobbing, or bouncing around. And then there's a front screen to this whole unit, and that's going to show you the video duration during a selfie mode, or just show you what you're recording exactly. Back in the day, it used to be a little black and white LCD screen that would say you've been recording for 5 minutes, 3 minutes. It would show you the red dot flashing. Now it does all that, but then it also shows you the video that you're recording to, but on the very front of the screen. You can't turn that off if that's not something that you want, but the one thing I will say is keep in mind that no matter what you decide to do, the video is always going to flash red while it's recording. That's for your safety and the safety of others, so that they know that you're recording and taking a picture or a video. Now here's your different modes. So I talked about it before. So that power button that's on the side controls your mode control. Photo allows you to capture stills and frames rather than take videos. Time-lapse lets you record video, but it's over a duration of time, anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours. And it'll play that back in seconds or minutes. So if you want to record a sunset, then the time-lapse might be the best bet for you. If you want to record traffic as it's going through and it's a nice day where they're flying, maybe you want to record for 3 hours or 30 minutes. That's where you have the ability to do that. And it'll then speed that video up using a higher frame rate, giving you a really cool aftermath or after effect. Now, for video, you can record video for whatever duration you want, qualities you can film with, and features with like Hypersmooth. So basically, you can record for whatever quality you want, 4K, 1080, HD, 2.7K, and then you can use things like Hypersmooth or Hindsight to really lock in and give yourself a better video. So here's some examples of what you might see. When it comes to using these cameras, they're very durable, they're water resistant, they can take a beating, they keep the video smooth and focused even if you're bopping around and doing stuff. They're really amazing devices. These are just some of the things that you might see videos of people using these cameras do, which I think is a really cool thing and I think adds to the whole experience. It's not just necessarily you going out and mountain biking or rock climbing. It could be as simple as you just walking around your neighborhood wanting to get a really cool video. But I guess to really sum it up, why would we want to use an action camera? And these 4 pictures to me really sum it up. In the top left, you've got that accessory piece. We call those squid arms or gorilla arms. They're great because they can lock onto anything. And what I mean by that photo is that there are millions of different accessories that you can get for a device like this that give you just so many different options and features that your regular camera wouldn't. Features like the Hypersmooth help with things like bike riding. The ability to put them on your chest or your handlebars and not get a shaky video, but a smooth and steady video looks really awesome. The underwater features are great too, like the bottom left corner. If you want to swim with this camera, if you're going on vacation to the Bahamas, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing that you're doing with your kids. Maybe you want to get a fun video of them seeing a turtle in the water. That would be a great reason to have one of these. And in that same boat, it's the weird perspectives that these cameras can give. They're not necessarily going to be the quality of, your mirrorless or your DSLR camera. However, they're going to give you an amazing view, and I think one of my favorites is still I put a harness on my dog and mounted one of these cameras, and watching him run around with his ears flopping in the wind was really cool, cute and fun, and again, it's a different perspective on what we see nowadays. So why would we want to use an action camera? It's just unique, it's different, it's a fun experience overall. Drones. These are probably my personal favorite camera. You've seen them, you probably heard some of the controversy on the news with them, but they're here to stay, they're not going anywhere. And for a young videographer who wants to get into something and has maybe their phone that they're comfortable using but not much else, this is the way to go. I think a drone is a great accessory for every photographer who wants to get into something a little bit more advanced without necessarily getting too far out there. There are different drone types, but the main one we're going to focus on is the quadcopter. I'm going to have a bunch of different drones here in a second and break down and kind of exactly what those do, what those mean, and maybe why they matter a little bit more. So let's start with a single rotor. If you're familiar with any of these, I'm going to speed through them, but again, a quadcopter is the main one. Single rotor, though, looks like a typical helicopter. If you played with air hogs as a kid or have a kid who likes, toy RC controller things, then you're probably going to be used to the traditional helicopter toy that you can buy for them that comes with remote control. They fly around, they crash a bunch. It only works for a little bit. You might also be more of a hobby flyer, and you might have probably purchased fancy RC controlled helicopters that work, but a single rotor, it looks like your typical helicopter. Quadcopters are the most popular style of drone sold on the consumer level. Those are what you're seeing DJI produce for customers. That's what you're seeing most people use that aren't professional pilots. FPV drone needs goggles to fly, but typically only comes as a quadcopter. These are really cool experiences if you're not necessarily looking for something that is the best video, which I will say now these FPV drones can do 4K, so they're really turning into some of the best video you can get. But if you're looking for thrill, you want to have fun, you want to feel like a pilot, then FPV drones are the way to go. If you're looking for more of a cinematic experience and you're trying to record and get the best video or photo possible, then a quadcopter that's a cinedrone is the best. Flies as a quadcopter but has high quality camera and tracking features which are really useful and exciting. Hexacopter, it's a 6-bladed copter, great for filming and stability in the air. It's a really nice option to get into something if you're a professional videographer or photographer and you're looking for something that's maybe a little bit more, let's say, advanced, or just offers maybe you, the user, something a little bit more unique and different. However, you're going to need licensing, you're going to need pilot's permits. There's a lot of things that come with a hexacopter. But again, if you're looking to go that route and you're trying to become the most professional you can be, this is what you'll see on movie sets or hexacopters. So again, you're looking at a lot of money, but big payoff. Fixed wing rotors, more of a plane experience, great for people who want less of a copter experience and more of a plane type flying experience. Very similar, I would say, to the single rotor helicopter toys that you'll see in that same kind of boat. But very cool, very unique, different. Again, you were looking for things that just add to the experience of being a pilot. Now controllers. There's two main types of controllers on the market nowadays. You're going to see your standard RC controller, and then you're going to see your your screen controller. Now, your standard RC is going to basically be where your phone mounts in. One of the big things to keep in mind with any drone is that you need a screen to see what the camera is seeing. In order to control the camera and use it to its full function and ability, you need to be able to manipulate that. If you don't want to break the bank and you're looking for the cheapest alternative to get, I would say that the One RC standard remote controller is great because you don't necessarily get a screen. However, you do get a product that is loaded and ready to go. Easy to use, you can connect your phone, download all the videos to your phone. It really does add to the whole experience, it's easy to use. But if you're like myself and you don't want to use your phone, you want more of an all-in-one experience, you're going to download everything to your computer, or maybe just use the remote to transfer to your phone later, then I would recommend getting the upgraded RC controller. It's easier to use, you don't have to necessarily have your phone with you all the time, and it just kind of makes your life and experience a lot simpler. But what do you get to control? Most controllers will have the same controls, all will differ though, but here's the things that you can expect to have on whatever drone controller you buy. Control sticks. One joystick will control up and down movement as well as rotation. The other will control front and backwards and side-to-side movement. Antenna. Point them outwards, and these will be your connection point between drone and controller. Your gimbal dial. It's rotational control over the drone's camera. A record button. Clicking this will will record or take photos. Focus and shutter. This will give you refocus on what you're filming or shooting, or it will give you control over the shutter's control of the camera. And RTH, return to home, gives you the ability to send the drone back to where you took off from. Do not use this on a moving object. So things have changed since this has basically come out. Most drones should come right back to you and where you are located. However, depending on what you're doing, most of the older style drones, and I would say most drones in general, will return to where they took off from. Meaning if you're on your boat and you're going around the lake and you're doing a fun video of you guys on the boat having a good time and you click return to home, it's going to go back to where you took off from, which is the water. Now, it won't be able to land because it can't land in water. However, if it gets close enough and a little wave takes it, or maybe someone's not paying attention and they're skiboarding next to it, they might smash into it. You might lose your drone in the water. And when a drone's water damaged, there's not much you can do. A little bit of snow, a little bit of rain won't hurt it. Submersion will. Other things to keep in mind is that geofencing. It's a virtual wall. The drone will allow you to push forward or fly in this area. Typically, the fencing exists by airports, government buildings, national parks, and certain cities and properties. If you're worried about where you live and your proximity to any of these, big buildings or important things, I would look up online the geofencing, type in your zip code, and get an idea of what the parameters for flying. Some will let you fly, but you can't go over 50 meters. Some will say you can fly, but you have to be above 200 meters at all times unless you're landing. There's a bunch of different rules and regulations. I was in Arizona about 2 years ago in May, and when I was out there, we were very close to an Indian reservation, and I had to be careful about flying because you're not allowed to have a drone on Indian land. So that's another important thing to remember, is that depending on where you're located, things might not be available to you, the user, based on that. And then last, we'll talk again about the Pro versus phone controller. The drone will require some form of screen. It's necessary, just like we talked about earlier, to be used when you're flying. DJI, for example, has you connect your phone to the controller. Other Pro controllers will have a screen built in, and they will show you everything on the screen. So again, your call on that one. I personally opt for the Pro controller when I was buying mine, only because I think that not using my cell phone was really nice, and just being able to connect the drone to the physical controller and get started flying is just an easy and simple feature. What do you see on screen? So similar to our smaller camera counterparts, there are only certain things that we see on the screen as we are flying. One is distance from you and the drone. Altitude of the drone is second. Ability to switch between photo and video. Map with geofencing and surrounding area. Active track, cancel, or start. The return to home button, the RTH. And immediate land. So again, just like our our GoPro or action camera from DJI, or even from Insta360, which we'll talk a little bit more about their famous camera, you're able to control the camera's array of functions via the screen. Now, I think that for the most part, drones are pretty simple. Once you get past the idea of flying and getting used to those controls, which I feel like can be daunting at first, the next big thing to get used to is the thing you have to get used to is the permits and FAA flying regulations. Now, what does the FAA stand for? It's the Federal Aviation Association. Now, I had a customer one time ask me that, do we basically set them up for this permit and do all this stuff when you buy it? No, no place should. If you come to us, you buy from DJI directly, you go on Amazon, you get one from your cousin. It's not like these things are being regulated in that way, shape, or form. It's not like a gun or something else. The idea behind it is that if your drone is over the weight of 249 grams, you need a permit to fly. That's just standard. Now, that permit can be obtained via the FAA website, where you sign up, you type in the drone's weight calculations and everything else, and then they give you the serial number to then write on the drone. Why is this important? If you're ever stopped or questioned for your drone flying, again, it's federally regulated, so it would have to be some sort of federal agent or federal officer of some sort. Then if they find out you're above that weight class, you don't have a permit, they technically have the right to give you a fine or confiscate the property. So keep that in mind as you're using it. But if you're like myself and you have a drone that's under the 249 grams, which is clearly written on there that it is 249 grams or less, then you do not need to worry about this. Now, again, if you're using more of a professional drone, then yes, you do. But if you're not, you don't have to worry too much. Now, if you are registering your drone, this can be accessed on the website, faa.gov. Costs about $5 and includes a course and some information that needs to be read. After completion, you must clearly write out the permit number on the drone. However, if you are doing anything for business or commercial work, you need your Part 107. You pay $175 to take a course on flying. After completion, you can now do commercial and business-based work. There's tests involved with this. It's not the most simple processes, but to keep in mind, if you are recording something that is not for your own personal use, it's for business or someone else, then technically you need the Part 107. So keep that in mind when you're getting into this. I get customers that are just using this for construction or for their own business so they don't have to get on roofs while they're talking to customers and everything else. They need the Part 107, and if they don't and they get caught using this, they can be fined. The worst fine that has been received for flying a drone was a couple who was in a national park. I believe they accidentally crashed into a bald eagle, possibly an endangered animal, if I'm not mistaken. From there, then they received $10,000. They received a $10,000 fine for the minimum, and they were in prison for 5 years. So it can be an incredible offense if you're not doing this properly into the law. I recommend you read into it a little more before you do anything. But if you're truly worried about this and this is deterring you from buying a drone, get a drone that's under 249 grams, look up the geofencing area, and fly for fun. Don't fly for business or for anything else until you've done more research on that. Here are some images that show off why I love drones. So you got the active track feature in the top left corner. That's what that green little circle is, or square on that gentleman is who's doing hurdles. But then the other things that I love is just the view that you can get on these. It's an incredible view, something that you won't see, something that's more of a movie-like shot. Every time I see these, I think of Jurassic Park, that scene where they're flying around the island and they show it off via a helicopter. There are a lot of options here. So have fun with it, play with the drone, and just get to enjoy and experience it in your own way, shape, or form. But as I'm talking about this, why do we want to use a drone? I like to think of it as the camera that can go places that man can't. If you wanted to get a shot like this 30, 40 years ago, you bought a helicopter, rented a helicopter, put a real expensive camera on there, and hope you got the angle once you took a look at the film later. It's not only good for that, but if you're someone who's trying to get group photos or family photos, you can get a group shot without having to get on a giant ladder or reconfigure yourself to get whatever it is you're trying to shoot. It's new perspectives, new views, things that you couldn't get standardly with a camera walking around that you're able to get with something like a drone. And I think that's a really unique and fun experience. Alright, so getting away from the drones, let's talk about our next feature, a camcorder. We have recently now no longer really carry these guys anymore. Sony's discontinued so many other models, they only have a few left. Lumex makes a couple, and I believe Panasonic also might have one or two out there. Camcorders were extremely popular in the 90s, the 80s, late 70s, and even before that, before camcorders really started to pop off and become a thing, you had more of your Super 8s and your 8mm and your Brownie cameras, which shot video on film. Nowadays, we don't necessarily have that anymore. We have our phones, we have our professional-based mirrorless or DSLR cameras that do all that for us without us necessarily having to have a special camera just for that. But for some of us, we aren't interested in the photo realm. We want to just shoot video. But we want to get the closest thing to professional grade as possible. Camcorders are basically that. So to really break it down as smooth as possible, I know this isn't the most popular subject for most people. They're not as concerned about it, but I feel like it's still necessary to talk about. You have your camcorder controls. Power button. So the power button turns the camera on and off. Record button. That's going to start the recording or stop the recording. Zoom toggle. Depending on the camera that you have, if you have a digital zoom or a electronic zoom, digital or optical zoom, that's how you zoom. Photo button takes the picture. Focus knob or dial focuses your camera for you if you're not using automatic focus. Iris or aperture control gives you the ability. Hi there, guys. Hello. Hi.
We were informed that today's camera classes.
Yes, we started at 5:30, so we're almost done with this.
Okay.
But today is the beyond the traditional camera.
So is it virtual or offline?
We do both, in person and online.
Okay. So I don't see people around. So
Nobody's here today, unfortunately, so I just have the camera going on right now. So we have this streaming online. I have a couple viewers. But today is the final Thursday of the month where we do beyond the traditional camera. This is where we talk about drones, GoPros, Insta360 cameras, that sort of thing.
Okay, so I can join from the
coming
coming
Thursday.
Thursday, right?
Yeah, this upcoming Thursday is the intro class.
Intro class?
If you want to come in person, by all means. If not, if you grab a card by the small electronics, there will be a little QR code.
Okay.
Scan that, takes you right to YouTube, and then I live stream the class at the same time.
But I'll be coming offline. I'll be coming.
Yeah, you can come by all means in person. I teach online and in person every Thursday.
Okay, sure. So I'll be joining from the coming Thursday.
By all means, I'm here.
Thank you so much, sir.
Of course,
I'm so sorry to disturb you about the
you are
class.
totally fine.
I'll be Jamie.
Have a good day. So I have some people coming next Thursday for our intro class. We'll be doing the new schedule next Thursday. So, to get back into it, iris or aperture control. So with iris or aperture control, you're controlling the aperture of the camera. This equates to background and foreground separation, as well as the light that you're letting into the camera. Sorry, everybody. Now, we talk about shutter speed. Now, speed of the shutter is going to control how fast our speed is going. So this equates to how fast our video is recording based on what we're getting. If we have stuff with a lot of live action or fast speed or a lot of fast things moving in there, then we can raise our shutter speed faster. If we don't, we can keep it lower. That gives us more light if we keep it lower, but then slows down the camera. White balance, similar to what we would know about mirrorless and DSLR cameras. White balance controls the color of white on the camera. Playback controls then give us the ability to play back the videos and to go through with that. Again, most of the camcorder controls that you're seeing and reading on this are the things that you will see and get to use when you're using mirrorless or DSLR cameras. So do you necessarily need a camcorder? No, but if you're just looking to do video and you really are interested in photo, camcorders are great. They're easy, they're portable. Some of the settings that you can change on the camcorder, which I think are really important. Not to say you can't do this on other cameras, but what separates them a little bit is the video quality. Setting your camera for HD, 4K, or any other qualities your camcorder is capable of. Image stabilization. Setting your camera to have image stabilization on will ensure that you have a non-shaky video. Face detection. Most camcorders will have an auto face detection, which depending on what you're filming can help you keep humans in focus. Frame rate. The rate at which you're capturing frames on your video. Lesser rate, better for simple and standard videos. Faster rate, better for sports, action, or slow-mo. Bit rate. Setting this helps you take your camera, helps your camera intake information. The higher the bit rate, the more info your camera is taking in. Exposure control controls the darkness and lightness of your video. And again, all this stuff can be changed and fixed as you're going, but if you're starting off with a brand new camcorder and you want to know what to play with, these are probably the better options to start looking at. Why use camcorders? I tried to use a couple images to kind of describe this. It was really hard for me to find some moving GIFs for you guys to sum it up, but I mean, really to break it down, you see in the top left image how portable and compact that is. Wraps around the wrist really easily, just makes it easy for transport and for taking around with you. When you're using it, you can get really cinematic shots, and that's what that bottom left image is too. Just easy to get those cool shots to make them look fancy. Accessories on the bottom right corner, you can see how many different little accessories you put on there. Microphones, grips, handles, all sorts of different shields and hoods for the camera as well too. Just different things that you can add to make your camera really pop off. And then lastly, the different types of shooting methods. Again, because it's so portable and compact and easy to carry around, you can really carry this places, take fun cinematic shots, and have an easier time doing it, maybe than if you were to bring a giant camera setup or anything else that you might or could think of. Lastly, and this should be the last thing before I wrap this class up, is Insta360 cameras, or just 360 cameras in general. I will say though, the brand Insta360 has really cornered the market on the 360 cameras, and they are probably the most unique of the bunch. So it works and functions like all other action cameras. Everything we've talked about with buttons and moving and controlling, all that's still available and is very similar to then everything else that we were just looking at. Works with two 180-degree firing cameras, so you get that 360-degree film. But if you want, you can set it so it only works with one of the cameras or both the cameras. So if you're not interested in that and you want to make it more of an action camera, like your GoPro, like your DJI, you can do that. It can hide or make selfie stick invisible, so it really does this cool technology of seaming together your video with those two 180 firing lenses. Therefore, when you're recording, it's going to look like the selfie stick that is there is hidden or not available. Creates a third-person view unlike any other cameras. When you see some of the videos that these things can make, it's really unbelievable how they shoot. The saying within Insta360 is to shoot first and think later, meaning if you want to just go and record, you can do that. And at the very end, now you want to make your video and make it the way you want it to look and be styled, you can do that. However, though, if you can then put your video and then play it on a VR headset, you don't need to customize or change your video. The viewer gets to move their head around in order to then see and be operating that video, which I think is really cool. And it's small, it's compact, it's durable, it's super easy to use, and it's a new featured tool that I think would be awesome for any person who is trying to get something unique and different in their camera arsenal. Here's some of the information of what you have. You got an app that you can fully customize things with. You have the ability on the phone to shift perspective at any point in time. And just like what you're seeing right now in the top right corner of the gentleman walking around, you get this really cool perspective that you might not be able to get with other cameras. Why do we want to use 360 cameras? I think these photos sum it up really nicely. Again, it's one of those things where it's a unique perspective. It's different from your traditional camera. It's not like your regular GoPro. It's not like your camcorder. It's not a drone, and it's not an action camera. However, it is a unique experience that can be used for a totally different purpose or for a very similar purpose as your regular camera can be. You can customize these videos, make them extremely personable, and they're really cornering a new market of shooting and thinking later. For those that maybe want to go on that motorcycle drive, but don't necessarily have the knowledge or the can-do to edit their video right away, maybe they want to do it at the very end of the trip. Maybe you're somebody who is just trying to have a little bit more fun and record and take pictures of things, but you're stuck on what camera to get, and you don't really want to go through the process at the very end of putting that video together or doing something interesting at the very end. This gives you the ability to just shoot and have fun with it, and then if you want to do something with it later, you can. And I think too, for people who are getting into content creation, this is an exciting camera to use because it so seamlessly transfers to the phone that the app that you're able to download for this or the computer browser gives you the ability to flex and control the whole unit really without having to get too fancy or over the top, giving you, the user, the power to make and do whatever you want at any point in time that you want. And that's all I have for you guys. I have to update these. My email has changed now since this video came out. I am now saxon@app.com. However, though, you can reach, call me, text me, whatever's easiest for you at the number listed below or the email there too. But again, saxon@app.com. You should get redirected if you email this one. I'm always here. I'm available anytime. I'm off Tuesday, Wednesdays. But yeah, next week we'll have our beginner class. We'll already have two students who will be in class that day. They just came in during the while we were talking there. So they're going to be here next week. And then from there, again, we have the same kind of schedule rotation. It's intro to cameras, intermediate cameras, advanced cameras, and then beyond the traditional to close out the month. I appreciate you guys for coming and being a part of the class. I'm going to let this video run for a little bit longer. If anybody has any questions they want to ask, they can chat in right now. Go ahead and ask those questions. I'll stay on the line probably until about 6:30, and then from there I'll jump off. well, waited a few more minutes there. Doesn't look like anybody has any questions for me. Next week will be the beginning of the month, so we will be doing intro to cameras. If anybody who has any questions or is ready to go about that, just email me or give me a call. But if for anybody who's interested, just sign up, or not even sign up, just join. I'll be here for that next Thursday. We'll have a couple people in class already, and if not, I'll see everybody else online. Thanks for joining, everybody. As always, I appreciate having you, and until next week, keep on taking pictures, keep shooting, and yeah, I'll see everybody next week. Take care. Have a good night.